You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
Harold's going to be able to impact the game in the things that we're going to do with him. He's going to move around. You won't see him just lining up in the middle of our defense. He's going to be, where's Harold Perkins? And you're going to have to find him, and you're going to have to account for him. Just like we're going to have to account for Jared Verse. We're going to have many different ways to handle Jared Verse. We're going to have slide and tight ends and chips and doubles and all kinds of things. He's that good of a player, and they're going to have to find Harold Perkins as well.
Brian Kelly meeting with reporters on Monday, talking about the challenge that Florida State and every team is going to face with handling Harold Perkins. One of the really interesting things about this game, as much as we've talked about Mason Smith, and with good reason, Mason Smith he's a disruptor. He is a giant, literal force in the middle of your defense. We have not spent a lot of time talking, until really today, talking about the impact that Harold Perkins may have on this game. And if you go look up the box score from that game last year, Harold Perkins played in the game. He made one tackle. It wasn't until the Tennessee week that Perkins really emerged as a key cog in this defense. And I would argue that defensively, there is no more disruptive player in college football than Harold Perkins. I don't think that's purple and gold homerism. I understand there's 133 players in college, or teams in college football at the FBS level, and there's a lot of defensive players, a lot of really good ones as well. I mean, Jared Verse is a great player, was a projected first-round draft pick. But kind of like what Brian Kelly was saying, you're going to come to the line and know where Jared Verse is. He's going to have his hand in the dirt, or he's going to be standing on the edge, but you're going to know where he is on the field and where he's going, by and large. That changes with Harold Perkins now. Mike Norvell, Florida State practiced today, Tuesday, and Mike Norvell met with reporters after practice on Tuesday. And, kind of talked about that a little bit, about that Perkins isn't just going to be in one place.
He's all over him, and he's lined up out at essentially what would be a nickel position in their 4-3. He's been a defensive end. He's lined up as a mugged up inside linebacker, playing a true, middle stacked linebacker. He can literally do it all. He is a dynamic player. He's somebody you have to account for. They also have good players around him that you see times where they also utilize him to get protection calls and things like that, and then attack opposite. So they know what they're doing. They do a good job with him, and just his versatility of what he can do as a rusher, but also there in coverage. You gotta be aware of him.
And that was all based on scouting Perkins a year ago when he was really just playing the jack linebacker. Now, to Matt House's great credit, and he deserves a ton of credit for this, the challenge early, and the coaches were talked about this pretty openly, the challenge was a year ago Harold Perkins was playing the jack linebacker spot. Well, you had B.J. Ojulari playing there. So the challenge was, how do we get both guys on the field without being susceptible in the back end? Like, how do we have both these guys on the field without taking out a defensive back? Because then ultimately what some teams adjusted to do was Perkins would have to travel, so they'd flex a guy out, and they would take Perkins out of the box. Well, you don't want Harold Perkins in pass coverage. Not that he couldn't do it, but he's not a defensive back. There's just guys who could do it better. So to Matt House's great credit, he found ways to get creative to get Perkins on the field with Ojulari. And it's going to be even easier to get Perkins on the field this year because he is a true three-down linebacker because he can do everything. He can stop the run. He can rush the passer. He can turn and cover a tight end. He can do all of that stuff, which makes him that much more valuable. And even Norvell, they asked him, when you're scouting this team, how when accounting for Perkins, how much does that impact your scouting?
it's built about around matchups. And, we try to put our guys in the best situation to go showcase all that they can do. And, when you're facing teams that value and utilize, the versatility of guys' skill set, then you have to be aware of that. But, there's sometimes that it's more extreme in what you have to do, and then it kind of limits, probably a little bit of the volume of what you're going to try to do. You're going into a game one, you got to expect it all. We've been doing things that they've shown. We're doing things that, who knows, maybe they've never shown, but just what if? We're trying to. That's our job as coaches, and utilizing walkthroughs, utilizing those times. This last week, just trying to play every scenario of what could happen and kind of go from there.
Have you looked at, really looked and remembered what LSU was like a year ago in this game? The starting linebackers in this game a year ago were Greg Penn and Mike Jones. Your starting cornerbacks were Mekhi Garner and Colby Richardson. You had Jay Ward and Greg Brooks playing safety. Y'all. And Major Burns, excuse me. It was Ward. So those were your fives. You started in a nickel. You had Richardson, Garner, Ward, Brooks, and Burns. You've got Brooks and Burns back, and Ward was a really good player who's off to the NFL, but Colby Richardson, Mekhi Garner, Richardson didn't keep a job. Jark Bernard Converse ultimately won that other starting job. And neither Greg Penn nor Mike Jones are starting this year. You're going to have Harold Perkins and Omar Spates. It's just dramatically different what you're looking at, what Florida State is going to be looking at defensively. When Mason Smith got injured, Mekhi Wingo went in, but all you had was Mekhi Wingo, Jaquelin Roy, and Jacoby and Guillory. But yes, you're really good with Ali Gay and B.J. Ojolari. But my point is, you held Florida State to 24 points last year in this game. Even with all of the defensive deficiencies that you had, now, I would argue, just putting Harold Perkins on the field makes you exponentially better than you were defensively a year ago. Just having, in this game, just having on the field. I completely understand the questions. We've talked about the questions and concerns in the secondary. Perkins' impact in this game is massive. Would love it if Mason Smith were playing. He's not. We've got to get over that. But as much as we are talking about the secondary, and rightfully so, because I think LSU secondary, as I've said here, they are a gigantic question mark, and it may work out. Like, we didn't, at this point last year, weren't sold on. Look, Colby Richardson started the opener. Nobody knew what Mekhi Garner was going to be. Jark Bernard Converse really studied you. Joe Fouché became a starter. A lot evolved. So that's going to evolve again this year. But Florida State has the most experienced offensive line in college football. Florida State's offensive line has a nation's best 307 games played and 214 combined starts. That is 41 games played and 35 starts combined, more than the next closest team. Florida State's offensive line, by far, is the most experienced offensive line in college football. LSU's offensive line has a combined 65 starts. Florida State has a combined 214. Okay? That Florida State offensive line against the LSU defensive front, for all we're talking about with the secondary, you got to have this front seven pressure Jordan Travis, stop the run, make them pass dependent, Harold Perkins wreck stuff, LSU's front seven, even without Mason Smith. That right there, to me, is as big a story as any in this ballgame. Now, I think LSU's going to score 30 on everybody they play this year. I think the offense is going to be really good. But if LSU's defense can replicate the performance a year ago, which wasn't great. Jordan Travis had a really good game. He threw for 260. Florida State put up 392 yards of total offense. Couldn't get him off the field on third down, 11 of 17. But you held him to 24 points. You had a couple of red zone situations after muff punts where you didn't allow a score. But you hold this team under 30, you're winning this game on Sunday, excuse me. And I think that is a massive, massive challenge for LSU's front seven. As much as we're talking about the secondary, it's the front seven with Harold Perkins against that veteran offensive line. That's the game. That's the game within the game for LSU on Sunday.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.